Every entrepreneur thinks of building something bigger than themselves, something that lasts. But here's the hard truth. Most companies fail. Not because of the product, not because of the market, but because of culture and leadership.
What is it that's actually different about your organization? How is it you operate that's different than your competitors? It is culture. It is how the organization operates and reacts to clients as we go along.
My guest today has lived this lesson at the highest level. Chris Dyer is a trailblazer in leadership and company culture. He's built a company that has landed on the Inc. 5000 5 times, written one of the top HR books of all time, and guided some of the world's biggest brands in shaping culture where people thrive.
Sometimes the people that get you here aren't the people that are going to get you there, meaning you have to be willing to let people get on and off the bus as you are moving along in your business.
But Chris isn't just a business leader. He's an adventurer, he's an athlete, and a coach who has climbed mountains like Kilimanjaro and has guided Olympic-level athletes. Today, we're talking about how to scale your business without losing yourself or your people along the way. So, if you're an ambitious professional looking for how to scale to 7 figures or more without sacrificing time, family, and freedom, this might just be the blueprint that you've been searching for. Chris, you are welcome to the Growth Code podcast. For the benefit of those that are meeting you for the very first time and may not know exactly who you are, please talk to us. Who exactly is Chris Dyer?
Well, it's always an uncomfortable question to answer, I guess, maybe at least for me. But I'm Chris Dyer. I'm a serial entrepreneur, author, and keynote speaker. So I have had many businesses over my career, and kind of the last big one that I had, we really got well known for a lot of the really kind of groundbreaking things we did around culture and remote work, and that kind of propelled me into writing some books, and now I spend most of my time at conferences, speaking to groups, or working with companies to help them with their productivity, performance, and profits through culture.
Impressive. Productivity, performance, and culture. That's really very impressive. Now, Chris, your career has been anything but ordinary, like you rightly said. I mean, you've gone from Hollywood hotels to Olympic coaching to mountain climbing and building high net worth businesses like you've rightly talked about. So when you look back at all of this, what threads all of these things together? What experiences bring all of these things together?
Well, I think there's certainly a willingness to try things and to say yes, probably before I was ready. Early in my career, if I thought I could do something, I was like, I can wing it, I can do it. It's funny, as you get older, you're a little bit less that way. You've learned there's a lot more things that can go wrong. But I always try to remember that, like, my youthfulness of, if someone asked me to do something, even if I didn't think I could totally do it, I would still say yes. And then I would find a way to do it, or I would find a mentor to help me. I didn't wait for perfection in order to do the next thing. And I would watch my friends and I'd watch colleagues. Well, I have to go get that degree, or I have to go take that extra class, or I need a little bit more experience before I can go do that thing. And I just didn't have that ceiling above me. I was, let's go try it, let's go do it. If I fail, I fail. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I've jokingly told people, I had the mindset, especially when I was like in my 20s, like, if I had to do brain surgery, I could probably figure it out. Now, I wouldn't have actually done it, right? But like, I had that, if I really had to, if you put a gun to my head and said, I have to do it, I'll go figure it out. There has to be a book to read. I can go talk to some other doctors. Like, that mindset of, I could figure it out if I had to. And I think that has always led me in the right direction. Sometimes in the wrong direction, but then I was able to fix it. But I think as a steady path forward, to always be curious and always be willing to learn and say yes to the next thing instead of playing it safe or being too comfortable.
Impressive. Thank you so much. It's really nice that you've talked about, your growing up days and how willing to try. Not waiting for perfection. A lot of people are held back because they're waiting for the right moment. They're waiting for the perfect moment. And research actually shows that people that are willing to try and fail are more likely to succeed than those that are waiting for the perfect moment to try at all. That's very, very impressive. Now, you talked about, while you were young, you were trying to figure these things out, and you kind of mentioned mentorship there. So how did you identify the right mentors to work with to get you to where it is that you are today?
Well, I'm not sure if I was really thinking about the right mentors. I was looking for a mentor, like who is someone around me that I can find that could help me. I wasn't so strategic about it to say, well, geez, how do I go find Tony Robbins, or how do I get, the perfect person? I remember when I was working in Hollywood, the general manager called me in the office on like my fourth day and said, we need an EVP. Can you go create us an EVP? And I went, sure, boss, I can do that. And walked out of the office and thought to myself, what in the world is an EVP? And so I went and figured out that eventually it was like an emergency evacuation plan. I'm probably getting the acronym wrong, but what I needed was a plan that we had to have on file with the city about how the hotel would operate if there's an emergency, how do you evacuate people and all this stuff, right? It was a brand new hotel. So I didn't go looking for the perfect mentor. I just went next door to the hotel next to us and found the guy who had the same job as me and said, hey, how do I, do you have one of these? Can you give me an advice? And the guy just picked his up and gave it to me and said, here you go, bring it back when you're done. Right? And we didn't have Google back then. We barely had Word Perfect. We didn't even have Microsoft Word back then. And I just had to sit every day and retype it, right, into our own version of that. And within a week, I handed it back to my boss, who was shocked that I had gotten it done that quickly. And I was kicking myself, I could have put my feet up on my desk for another few more weeks. You didn't think it would take me a month to get this done. But, I just went and found who would know the answer to this? And you just start asking. And that was the way, I think I've always done it, is who might know, and I just go ask for help, and people generally will say yes.
That's very impressive. And that reminds me of one of my mentors that taught me something. And it says that if someone asks you to do something that you have absolutely no idea about it, just say yes and then go figure out how to do it, rather than, what you likely did there. And some people have a mind of, it's more like fake it till you make it kind of thing. But some people are against that. So how do you get to draw the line between fake it till you make it, or say yes and figure out how to do it, and bluntly deceiving people on what it is that you have no ability to do?
It was a little bit of fake it to make it, but I also wasn't faking something that was going to put someone in danger. I wasn't pretending to be a doctor, right? I wasn't faking being, somebody with $1 billion and I'm trying to ask people to invest in something that isn't real. I wasn't doing anything nefarious. So when we say fake it, what we mean is, see yourself as a person who is capable of doing this. It's a little bit more, you could kind of change the lens to manifesting. And later in life, I have really kind of channeled into this idea of manifesting, and that is, how do you really see yourself as that version of yourself that you want to be? Not, I want to be that one day. No, I am that. I am that thing. And you embody that, and you do the activities, and you act in a way that is incongruent with the thing that you want to be. And so you act a little differently, you hold yourself a little differently, you think about things a little differently. And so I think when you're doing it that way with sincerity, it's not the negative connotation of fake it till you make it. It's the, I'm going to be willing to go try. I'm going to, if I hold myself, I say I'm the world's best speaker that ever lived. Well, what are the things that the world's best speaker would do? Practice every day, work on their craft, read a lot of books, do a lot of research. Instead of I want to be the world's best speaker one day and I just hope I get there. No, if I am, what are the activities I would do? and then start doing those activities. And so that's what I think we really mean by that, or at least that's the good version I take on.
That's fantastic. Thank you so very much for that clarity. And one way I like to put it is you need to be before you become. Now, being is a state of mind. You can be, like you rightly said, the greatest speaker in the world. You can be that in your mind, and gradually you actually become that in physical nature. So thank you so very much. Now, one of the things you've done is, we know you've written a book and you've done a lot of work around company culture, which is something that you talked about as well. So what moment made you realize that company culture wasn't just a HR buzzword, that it was actually the driver of growth and freedom for leaders?
Well, basically because I screwed it all up. Like, I had built the wrong culture. We started off, we were a very small company. There was a few people in the office. And so managing a few people, and it was like, my friends and family, that didn't really take very much. The culture was that we all wanted this thing to succeed. And as we grew, and suddenly I have hundreds of employees and thousands of people that I'm responsible for, I hadn't reinvented the culture to really reflect the larger organization. We were still kind of operating with this really naive beginning, kind of a company situation. And so when we had a big crisis occur, and I'm looking around and asking my people for help, and I'm frustrated that they're not coming up with bigger and better ideas, and I'm upset that they're not, doing more to help us save the company and honestly save their own jobs. I realized that I had created this environment, that they were just operating inside of the rules and the constraints that I had created. And so when I decided I was no longer going to be involved in the day-to-day operations, I was going to only spend all of my time every single day. How do I improve the culture? How do I go in and help the customer service team operate better? How do I help sales operate better? How do I, what are the things that we can do on a cultural level that make people like their work, communicate better with one another, make better decisions, make decisions faster, right? Ultimately make our customers happier. How do we innovate? All of these things, I would work on them, one at a time. And we would do experiments and all of this. And I was just doing it because it felt like the right thing to do. And within a year, it was like, oh, not only was this the right thing to do, our performance is way up. Our productivity is way up. Our profits are way up. Our sales are going through the roof. And it wasn't, it was all about the culture. We're selling the same thing to the same people. I had the same employees. I didn't bring in some magical unicorn employee into my company that changed everything. It was about changing the systems and how we operate and the expectations and the goals and all of that just elevated everyone to a different level. And that was when I realized culture is the only way to significantly and consistently raise the bar for an organization.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so very much for sharing that. Now, with your experience, you've now helped over 50 of the world's top companies with company culture and leadership. Why do you believe culture is the ultimate competitive advantage for scaling to 7 figures and beyond? For those that are thinking of scaling to 7 figures and beyond, building businesses of this capacity, with the experience you've had with over 50 of these top organizations in the world, building their culture and leadership, why do you think it is the ultimate competitive advantage, especially in this world it is that we are living in?
Listen, most of us are selling something that somebody else is selling. It is pretty rare occurrence that you are out there selling something completely novel and brand new in the market. In fact, if you are, that's probably the hardest thing you're ever going to do. Because if people don't understand it, they don't know what it will do. But where most of us are selling a commodity, you're selling insurance. I was selling background checks. You're selling financial services or, marketing, whatever it is. And so what is your real competitive advantage? Because I went through this. We have the best customer service. Yeah, well, everyone says that. And then at some point, people just expected it. It wasn't a novelty. It was like, we expect great customer service. We expect great pricing. Those are just given. Those are table stakes to even be considered. what is it that's actually different about your organization? How is it you operate that's different than your competitors? And it is culture. It is how the organization operates and reacts to clients as we go along. And so a really good example of this is, things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. Every once in a while, something would happen where a client would be upset enough that I, as the CEO, would now need to be brought in, right? That whatever was happening along the way, they were unhappy with the results or with the expectations or whatever it was, or they were just one of those people that wanted to yell and scream at the boss. And I would get on the phone. And this is the difference, I think, in how we operated. We did not try to get the client back to happy. So if the client was here and then something bad happened, now they're over here. What most people do is say, well, how do I get you back to where you were? And what we did is through this thing called appreciative inquiry, and this is one of my pillars of company culture, is positivity. Is how do I think about how to help you not only get back to where you were, but could we even make the situation better? Now that we're talking, now that we have had this thing happen, how do we create a solution that is better than it was before that incident occurred? So we're thinking about innovating in this moment beyond your expectations. So we are, some people calling this wowing people. What was the shoe company? And I'm blanking, but they were really famous for Zappos. Zappos is really famous for the customer service people had carte blanche to do whatever, almost anything they wanted. And they would find out that, the customer didn't have the shoes in time, but they heard that they were all having lunch. They would order pizza for them to say they were sorry. They would do these wowing things to really spark the clients, oh my gosh, they really heard me, they really understood. So we were trying to find those kind of moments. And what we would do is we would ask them, just so I understand, before we talk about the problem, tell me what we're doing right. What is it that we're doing well that that is good in our relationship, so we can put that over here and we don't have to worry about that. I don't have to spend any time on that. And they would list off 50 things that we were doing amazing for them. And what you heard them do was go from level 10 mad down to 5. Right now they're well, you do all these amazing things and blah, 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 blah. By the way, this works great with your spouse or your partner if you're having an argument. You have a job and you do all these things and you do this and but you didn't listen to me for 5 seconds. Okay, well, maybe you're not that bad, right? And it kind of brings it down. And that would bring people, they would really okay. And then now, in a perfect world, if you had a magic wand, how would this process work differently? And then they would describe it. And you're oh, we could do that. We could reprogram that. We could change how the invoice looks. We could give you an option to download a CSV instead of a PDF, whatever the little thing they came up with that would be better for them. We can do that. And all of a sudden they're this is the best company I've ever worked with. Right? They heard me. They did something about it. And so that was our competitive advantage. Right? And when we did stuff like that, within a month, we had 3 or 4 referrals from that client. Right? Now we were getting business from all these other places we never knew because they were telling their friends about what happened. So I know that's an extremely long answer, but we're all selling the same crap. I think culture is the way to differentiate yourself and to really elevate what your company can do.
Really, really fantastic. Thank you so very much. Now, one of the things that you talk about a lot is transparency, positivity, and innovation, right? How can leaders practically embody those values without burning out or losing credibility?
Well, I always have to apologize to leaders, but to do it right, you're going to have to do a bit more work up front. And that's going to feel tough. And that's going to feel like you don't have the space or the time or the energy to do it. But if you do this, it will save you so much time later on. And it is your job to take those time savings and use them wisely, not fill them up with crap, with just more mindless activities, and more mindless meetings that you don't need to be in, but to use that new space for time to think, to strategize, to think about running experiments in your business that might help you do better, right? So when I did a little bit of extra work up front in that year that I was spending changing the culture, I suddenly had all this extra time, and then I was using that to develop experiments and go and run experiments. And I didn't fill it up with, well, now we've figured all this out, now I'm gonna go back to being in 1,000 sales meetings that I don't need to be in. You have to be really careful as leaders. We get ourselves into a lot of minutia we don't need to be in because we have a fear of missing out. We want to make sure people don't screw up and all of that. So you mentioned transparency, and that's a great one. And that takes a little bit of work because that means we have to slow down and spend 5 extra minutes on every call explaining to people all of the information that they don't have that will help give them the color around why we're making this decision. Or why is the client upset about this? Or why does their boss really want it to be this way? Or whatever it is. What is the extra information they don't have? Because often we skip by that. And when people don't have the information they need, they take that gap and they fill it in with a past negative experience. A really simple example is if every day I come in and I wave to you and I say, hey, how's it going? And then I don't know, 5 months into it, there's a whole week, every day I come in and I don't say hello to you and I just walk right by and I go to my desk. In the past, you're like, well, the last time my boss treated me that way, I got fired. I must be getting fired. They must be mad at me. If you went to me and said, hey, are you okay? I noticed you kind of coming in the mornings, are you okay? And you might be like, oh, I've been fighting with my spouse. It's got nothing to do with me, right? That's information I didn't have. Or, maybe we're gonna lose a big client or whatever. But that's my job if I'm your boss, be like, hey everyone, wanna let you know, we're dealing with some stuff. I'm gonna get back to you. I'll let you all know what's happening. But just if you see me being a little bit not myself, just let you know, we're dealing with something really intense over in this other department right now. Oh man, that just tells everybody okay, it's not me. I'm not getting fired. No one's mad at me, right? And I'm not running around in the office. And so it takes that little extra effort to give people that little extra information. We used to give everyone a copy of our P&L summary every single month. And that took time to train people how to read a P&L, how to make them financially literate. And then they understood how we were spending the money, why we were spending the money the way we did. And that helped them come up with better solutions, understand our decisions better. If they're going, well, why aren't we hiring 5 more people in customer service? We're so overwhelmed. And you're like, listen, the last 4 months, we lost money. The company's struggling right now. We're not gonna go add 4 more people in customer service, even though we might need it, right? Then they get the push and the pull and they understand what senior leaders are thinking about. So transparency is this, it's the golden ticket, to use the Willy Wonka analogy. If you can actually find it, if you can find ways to do it and actually deliver to your people, the transformation is pretty remarkable.
Wow, that's really, really remarkable. A lot of times leaders kind of shield these kinds of information from the others and they feel like they're trying to protect them from, maybe getting demotivated and stuff like that. But in the actual sense, from what you say, it's something that would actually help them understand better the perspective of leadership and why they're making certain decisions, and which would ultimately build their buy-in from what it is that you're talking about. That's really profound. Thank you so very much. Now, one of the things I observe, especially with the leaders I work with around the world, is many people want to scale to 7 figures, multiple figures, and all of that. But oftentimes they do that at the expense of their time, at the expense of family, or at the expense of their freedom. From your own journey, what are the key lessons you learned of building a successful business, a successful multiple figure life without sacrificing any of this?
The truth is, it does depend on the goal. But if you're trying to build something big, you're trying to build something significant, you will have to make sacrifices. It is a lie to say that you can do all of that and still go to every single one of your kids' soccer practices or football practices, excuse me. And it's not true. So all of my mentors and every person I know that have really struggled with this, what they have settled on is it's about quality over quantity. And so if you're trying to balance that between, I have to do all this stuff for my business to be a success and all of that, I want to ensure that those interactions I have, if I'm worried about time with my family, and worried about time with my kids, or about time with my friends and all of that, make sure that those moments you do have with them are high quality and that you are fully present for them. That is what matters. And I had many of mentors of people that were way ahead of me, that were going into retirement, and they told me some version of the same thing, which was, and these are people that traveled, a lot more than I did. They were in planes 200 days a year. They were really burning the candle at both ends. They said that their kids all told them some version of the same thing. They didn't remember any of the days that they weren't there. They remembered the days that they were there, right? They remembered the quality moments. They remembered that they were at their soccer game on Saturday. They remembered that they were at parent-teacher conference, the special, most, the important events. Kids just weren't taking a tally mark of how many times you were at soccer practice. Do you know what I mean? So I think a lot of times this is our own guilt and burden, because I don't know anyone who's been able to go and build a successful big business like you're talking about without having to make some sacrifices, because you can't take it easy in life. You cannot take it easy. You have to choose to take it hard over and over and over again, right? And that's everything from, do you take the stairs instead of the elevator every day to get your steps in? That's, do you make those phone calls you've been avoiding making? That's, do you get on the plane and go meet with that potential client to seal that deal? What is it? What are the hard things that you're not doing? You've got to do those if you want to be a success. You have to be willing to work as hard or harder than those people, your competitors and those people around you that are trying to do the same thing as you. There just isn't a way to take it easy, sit with your feet up, and hope that it's all going to work out and you get to be, with your family all the time. This is a fairy tale. But you have to find the balance that's right for you, and then make sure that you, again, on the personal side, make it about quality, not quantity.
Fantastic. It's make it about quality and not just quantity. Fantastic. Thank you so very much. Now, coming from someone like you that have built multiple businesses that have, been pretty successful in the past, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs that are trying to scale to multiple figures as well? What are some of the blind spots that they should look out for in that process?
Sometimes the people that get you here aren't the people that are going to get you there. Meaning you have to be willing to let people get on and off the bus as you are moving along in your business. And sometimes people can evolve and they'll adapt and change, and they can continue to stay in your business. But you start off with 3 people in an office and suddenly you've got 300. The mistake that people make is trying to promote sometimes those people who you wouldn't hire them to do that job, but because they started with you, you've promoted them up, and they don't have the ability to take you from a $500,000 company to a $5 million company. Getting to $5 million, getting to $1 million is really hard. Getting to 5 is the hardest thing you'll ever do. After, if you get to 5, it all of a sudden gets a little easier. Getting to 10, getting to 20, those things get easier for some reason. And because you get traction, you have more clients, you have a larger network, they trust you more. Taking a chance on a $5 million company is not anything like taking a chance on a $500,000 company. So, you have to really think about, that was a hard lesson for me to learn. I was very loyal to my people. I really wanted people to come along and be on that journey with me. But what I needed to do is give them very clear expectations of someday maybe you're the director of sales and someday we're going to have a CRO. A CRO has these qualifications. This is what a CRO can do, right? And so if they see themselves in that role, well, if they want to be in that role, they had better become that person by the time we need that, or someone else from the outside is going to be coming in. Again, that's about me being transparent with them, right? But you're going to have to lose people. Sometimes they're going to leave and go to somewhere else because they're not the right person anymore. Sometimes you're going to have to open the bus door and push them out because they're not the right person anymore. And that's a tough thing to do. But if your ultimate goal is to get to there, the people you have sometimes can be the block because they've never worked in a $10 million company, or they never worked in a $20 million. They don't know the differences of what it takes to do some of that stuff. So I would certainly say that's one of the things. The second thing is the moment you can afford it, hire the next person to take that hat off of your head. When we start off, we're wearing 1,000 hats. But the moment, maybe even like right before you think you can afford it, hire that person and then give them that job and get out of the way and go get really good at the next thing. Because I noticed that entrepreneurs and CEOs hold on to too many hats for too long. And it slows them down and it keeps them from doing the thing that they do best to help the company. Some entrepreneurs are really good at sales and they should be out selling all the time, and yet they're doing the books and they're doing operations and they're like, it's just too much. They should be selling all the time. Some people are really good at the innovation, the inventing. Maybe they're actually the programmer for the software. Well, maybe they should be doing that stuff, right? And get somebody else to go do the sales and the bookkeeping. I find those are the two biggest things that really slow people down when they're starting off.
Fantastic. That's very, very valuable. And this is something I have observed myself in the course of the work that I do with people. And oftentimes what I say to leaders that I work with is you need to understand the value of your time per hour, right? So take, for example, if you're about, say, $1,000 per hour, whatever it is that you're doing, if you can get someone else to do that thing cheaper than $1,000 per hour, then it is time for you to sublet that thing, delegate it, or don't do it at all. But that's a way of identifying things that you should be doing and things that you shouldn't be doing, because it slows you down, like you rightly said. Now let's talk a bit more about your personal stuff, because you've talked a lot about your business and stuff like that. Now you've climbed mountains, you've coached athletes, you've built several companies. What did those climbs teach you about resilience, about leadership, and what truly matters?
I'll probably tell you about my last big climb, which was Mount Kilimanjaro. So when I sold my last business at the end of 2021, I told my wife, I said, listen, I'm going to do 2 stupid things and then we'll put the rest of the money in the bank. And one of those things was I'm going to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I always wanted to do it. It's probably the biggest, best, most intense hike where you're not going to die. Like there isn't really any day, like not an Everest or K2 or something where there's like actual, you could die. You're not going to die in Kilimanjaro unless you're being an idiot or something, or you have some medical condition that you don't know about. So I go for a year. I'm doing all the training, planning, and all this. And when we get there, it's the first time in my life in a very, very long time that I'm not in charge. Here we are, and we're gonna go do this big thing, this big hike. We've got 10 hikers and we've got 80 support personnel on this hike. This is a big moving juggernaut up this mountain. And I'm not in charge. I'm just going along for the ride, okay? And that was like a really impactful experience for me to kind of undo some of those natural tendencies to always want to step up and be a leader and be in charge and help out. And it was my job to shut up and walk. And I could be more observant of nature, of my own thoughts and things. But what I was really doing was having a lot of fun observing how they were leading and how they thought about going up the mountain. And so that was interesting, and we're doing all this. And then one day I noticed one of the guys, so like we're hiking and I'm watching these people with 80-pound bags of supplies running past me. Like I'm huffing and puffing, just walking, and they're running past me, right? I'm going back, oh, okay, pulley, up they go, right? They just go jumbo, and they'd be up, off they would go. I mean, it'd just be amazing to watch. But one guy was not going fast one day, and I noticed he had fallen a few times. We had helped him up, and this was not normal behavior, and I went and pulled the head guy when I got into camp and said, hey, I think there's something wrong. I don't know if he's hurt or sick, but there's something going on with him. And so they let him, kind of sleep through the night, and in the morning they decided he's not well, he needs to go down the mountain. Now here's the problem. He's got 80 pounds of stuff. That's the first problem. Second problem is you can't send a guy down the mountain who's sick by himself. So they had to send 2 people down the mountain, which means 160 pounds of equipment, food, and things, and emergency supplies that we had were thrown on the ground, and everyone there just got up and started taking something and started putting 1 or 2 things into their bag. No one asked them. No one told them to do this. They all just intuitively noticed our larger goal is to get right to what we're trying to do, this thing here. And they all knew they had to get up and take on a little bit extra right now because we lost 2 people temporarily. And watching that, I was in absolute awe. And then the leaders who, they had been in those positions earlier in their career, they were now the top dogs and the trail masters, and they went and picked up a bunch of equipment and food and supplies. And then I noticed there was a little bit left. Not all of it had been taken. And intuitively, the rest of us, the hikers, who had paid to be on this, right? Like we paid for people to carry our stuff. We all went and picked up something until it was all gone. And so every single person on that journey had to do a little extra to pick up the slack for the 2 people we lost, to carry the load for them that they couldn't continue, because what was important was that we finished this goal. That was the first kind of really big lesson that I learned, the reminder that the journey is about the team, right? It's about the group. It's about everyone there trying to help in whatever way they can for us to get where we think we're going. And when you have the culture right, when you have the people right, they just stand up and do it. The head guy did not stand up on a rock and give everyone a speech about how everyone was going to have to work harder and start assigning jobs to people. No, they already knew we had to do this. They understood that, right? The goal was clear. It was transparent. They knew the purpose was clear. And so there was no asking anyone to do anything. Everyone just volunteered. We all figured it out. The second thing that was really important was you got to know what the right goal is. You have to be very clear that your goal is correct. Because my goal was to get to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. When I got to the top and I touched the sign and we took the picture and I could barely breathe because you're up so high, I realized I had the wrong goal. Here I am standing at the top of the mountain. I still have 2.5 days to hike out. It's been 8 days to get to the top. It's now going to take us 2.5 days to get out. And I'm looking around and all of the locals are all taking off their hiking boots and putting on tennis shoes. Wait a minute, I don't have my tennis shoes with me. No one told me it's a lot easier to go downhill in tennis shoes than in hiking boots. Like hiking boots, you're pounding your toes. So what did I have? Black and blue toenails for a year, because for 2.5 days I'm pounding my shoes into the front of the hiking boot instead of wearing soft tennis shoes. I had done no preparation. I had done no squats or no exercises for downhill. Everything I did was Stairmaster, treadmill on the incline. It was hiking up mountains. I had done no preparation for the rigorous and absolutely miserable experience of going downhill, steep downhill for 2.5 days. And so I had the wrong goal. The goal was to finish the journey. The goal was to get back safely. And I think this is where organizations get it wrong all the time. They think if we can just get to 5 million, if I can just get this client, if we just get this employee, that's a good goal, but that's not the goal. The goal has to be something much larger, right? It has to be something much grander. It has to encompass the entire journey of the company, right? And that is what people can really understand. Because if you just say, the goal is to get to 5 million, and we get to 5 million, then, well, now the goal is 10. Like, they always feel like they're in the hamster on the wheel. Do you know what I mean? Instead of, the goal is for us to get to here and to sell the company to somebody like, whatever that larger thing is, that we understand what that is. So again, I apologize for the extremely long answer, but that was what I learned on Kilimanjaro.
That's really, really fantastic. And the thing is, there are always teachable moments in these kinds of activities. And it just brings to mind, part of what I do is I have what I call this executive leadership bootcamp, where I take a couple of leaders and we go to a certain location for a couple of days. And the one we did earlier this year, we did that in Marrakesh, Morocco. And one of the activities that we had planned for that event was a hot air balloon ride, which a number of the leaders had never done before and had said to me, I'm never going to do this, right? But we managed to get everyone on the trip to do that. Now, it wasn't as intense as climbing Kilimanjaro like you talked about, but it was something that they had never done before. And at the end of it, and I was using that to teach them something. A lot of times you're faced with challenges in business and you feel, you know what, I'm never going to be able to do this. But look at that, you've been able to do something that you had said before coming to this trip that I'm never going to do. But now if you've been able to, it's the same mindset that helped you to overcome that challenge of the hot air balloon, that would help you overcome the challenge of scaling to $5 million and more. Now, we're enjoying this conversation, right? I am enjoying this conversation, but as we gradually begin to bring this home, for the professionals that are listening right now, what's one practice that they can start today to build their influence, their leadership capacity without waiting for a crisis? Because sometimes people are waiting for crisis to be able to build, but like I say, if you wait until the time of war to start preparing for war, you're already too late. So what are those practices that they can implement right now to help them in their entrepreneurship journey?
Okay, so if you have a team, if you have people, the first thing you should do is stop making decisions for anybody. Now, yes, there are times when they might want to do something illegal or that's going to cost you $1 million. Like, yeah, then you're going to step in and stop them, right? But like, beyond that, when people come to you and say, well, what should we do? Or can I make this decision? You need to train yourself to say, go try it and find out. Like, show them you have the confidence in them. Even if you know that that's the wrong answer and they're going to screw it up a little bit and come back and learn from it and then give you the right answer. That experience of helping them and teaching them how to think and how to figure things out and how to navigate those things with confidence, and that you have the confidence in them to figure it out, it is so inspiring to people. They believe that if they keep coming to you and you have to keep giving them the answer, or you have to give them the approval, right? You have to, bless them as they walk out the door that with the decision they've made every single time, they don't feel empowered. And they're not going to think to make decisions on their own. And so everything gets stuck on your desk or in your brain. That's what happened to me. So I had to go like a whole year. I said, I will not make any decisions for anybody. I will not give them a yes or no. I will not give them the answer, right? I'm going to train them how to figure this out, or help create processes and resources and things where they can find this out on their own, so that if I step out of the business for a month, they're fine. They can operate. I want to go to Marrakesh with you and fly on an airplane, hot air balloon. They can continue to run the business. They don't have to be blowing me up while I'm gone, right? So that's a really big one, and it's hard to do because we don't realize how many decisions we're making for people all day long, and how reliant and how almost lazy they become, right? And they're not using their brains and not figuring out how to make decisions, or what kinds of decisions do we make in this culture, right, that are going to be good for the organization. The second thing is, and don't tell anyone you're going to do this, okay, but start saying yes to every question. Someone comes in your office and says, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we try this? Sure. Let's talk about it. What does that look like? Being open and being willing that your first response is some version of yes or curiosity, right? Hey, I was thinking about maybe we should try selling this thing. That's an interesting idea. Why don't you, come up with an idea, give me some context of what that means and how we would work on that. Get a committee together, allow people to continue that thought, because it's really easy to be a no person and to say no. Now you can always say yes and yes but. I can give you the most ridiculous version of this is if I came to you and said, hey, can we start selling meth in the basement? I could say yes, but you're gonna have to get the law changed first. It's currently illegal to do that, so I'm happy to consider this proposal, but the law's gotta get changed first. You technically said yes. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. No one's gonna ask you to do that, but there's always a way to say yes and or yes but if it's an uncomfortable ask or something really extreme. If someone comes in and says, will you double my salary? Yes, but here are the things that need to happen, right? In order for you to justify getting double your salary. These things would need to occur. So there's always a way to say yes to things. What I notice is that people got so used to me saying no or blocking it or pushing it off or saying we already tried that they just stopped coming to me with their ideas. And so our innovation just stalled, right? Or when clients said, well, can you guys fix this thing? Or can you change this thing? They would never bring it to me because they were like, well, Chris doesn't really value new ideas. So stop making decisions for people, help them make decisions, help them train to think like you, to think like their organization, and start saying yes to a lot more things. And you'll be, that to your point, that will help you win the war when it occurs.
Wow, those are really, really very valuable tips. The first one you talked there, helping them to make decisions for themselves. That's the clear difference between managing and coaching, right? One is easier to do. Management is easier to do. I know how to fix it. I can fix it myself. Let's move on. However, down the line, it's going to cost you a lot more. Now, coaching may take a bit more time because you're helping them to develop, their thinking abilities themselves. You're helping them to ask themselves the right questions. Yes, it might take a bit longer to get to, but when you do get there, that's where you can, like you talked about, fly with me to Marrakesh, Morocco, and you're rest assured that your business is doing well. So that's very, very valuable. All right, Chris, imagine you woke up one morning, right, and just everything we knew about Chris Dyer had been erased, like someone hacked into the internet and deleted everything we knew about you, all your businesses, everything gone down the drain, and you had to literally start to build your life and your career all over again. Where are you going to start from this time, and what are you going to do differently this time?
Well, I would probably, if I'm going to start from something new, I'm going to do everything I can to get really clear about what it is that's going to give me joy and make me happy in this moment, right? And then try to figure out where I can go and learn and make an impact. So if I have to start new, it's today. I'm going to get involved in something with AI. There's going to be something there. That's certainly where we're headed in the next. I think that's the easiest hit, right? Is can I go and do something there? So how do I learn? How do I get influence? How do I find people who can help me from there? And then where do I figure out where the gap is? Right, so I want to figure out very quickly where the gap in the market is and start to test and see where I can offer some bit of value or where I can charge, right? And start to make, money or whatever it is. So it's sort of that, it's almost like that exercise. I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a lot of kids that have done this on YouTube where they'll start with a paperclip. And they ask to trade with somebody for something that's slightly more valuable than a paperclip. And their goal is to end up with, a car, and they'll do it. They just keep trading and trading and trading and it's just getting a little bit. And you can do the same thing. If you're building a business, you can trade for people and get people to help you. And you might be asking them for just slightly more than what you can give back to them. but people will generally do that to help you, because they, if you're doing the right things, you're trying to provide value, you're trying to be a good resource to them, like, you can find a way to kind of do that same thing, right? So if I had to build a business back up, there's also a potential. I mean, if I've been erased and no one knows who I am, so maybe I can't go get a job as the CEO somewhere either. If I had to just bootstrap it and do it myself. But I think certainly the idea that I would need to be extremely clear and be an expert and be the ace, right, in the deck, not the jack of all trades. I have a tendency to like to do a lot of things, and so in my life I have at times been the jack of all trades. And what I notice about people who I admire is that they have been much clearer. And so I think if I had to start all over again, I would try to be very clear about the one thing that I'm doing and not get too distracted and trying to do too many things, if that makes sense.
Wow, fantastic. Chris Dyer, it's been amazing having the last couple of minutes chatting with you. I have enjoyed every bit of it. On behalf of myself and everybody that's going to be listening to this later, I would like to thank you for taking our time out of your very, very busy, tight schedule to join us on this podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
What Chris has shown us today is that leadership and culture aren't soft skills. They are the hard edge of scaling businesses that last. Too many leaders chase seven-figure lifestyles only to realize the cost was too high. But the truth is, you can scale to seven figures without sacrificing your time, your family, and your freedom. Culture is the blueprint. Leadership is the climb. And the freedom, the type that helps you serve both your work and your life, it is possible if you get both right. This has been the Growth Code Podcast, and I have been your host, Sheyi Agbede. Until next time, remember, there's greatness on your inside, and the world is waiting for you to birth and manifest your greatness. Go out there and be profitable, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.